A lot of climbers dream of a home climbing wall, and several years ago, I set off on that path. But I longed for a wall that offered just a little bit more than what I ended up with.
All right, so this is my home climbing wall. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you've been around a while, also thank you. You're awesome, and you're probably pretty familiar with this wall. It has been around a while. In fact, it's been about 6 years now, and it's still standing pretty strong and looking pretty good. It was a pre-COVID project that turned into a more serious project over lockdowns, and you probably saw the build video where I put this together from start to finish. And you've probably also seen a few iterations of it, including one where I put wheels on it so I could kind of move it around, which is how I got it to this final resting spot. And I also have tried to make it a bit more weather tight with tarps and other methods, including a temporary roof line that lasted way longer than it should have. So I have torn that off camera, and it now finally has a more permanent roof, but unfortunately it's still kind of temporary because it's all tarped up because I ran out of time this season as well as money. So I hope in the spring I can cover it with some plexiglass or something that keeps it looking like a garden structure and letting sunlight in, but is more permanent and keeps the weather out. So maybe we'll get to that in the future. But for now, yeah, what am I doing with this climbing wall? Well, unfortunately, I'm going to be tearing it apart, but for good reason, and we'll get to that momentarily. But let's just start this extreme climbing wall makeover, or whatever I want to call it. Let's go.
Okay, so here's a three-dimensional recreation of what I'm currently working with. Honestly, I've mentioned it in previous videos, I've been quite happy with the wall, and it has served me really well, but there are definitely some things that bugged me that I want to improve upon. The first change I already talked about, and that was a more reliable cover for weather. So first change, check mark. Well, kind of. Now, the next change. Being adjustable was cool, but it was a little cumbersome, and honestly, I didn't adjust it that often. Also, sometimes the legs' proximity to the wall meant that I could feel them there when climbing, which was kind of a great simulator for outdoor hazards, but not really what I wanted from a home wall. Although they never actually got in the way, and I think they were totally fine, my toddler did bang into them once or twice, not paying attention where he was going when he was running around, so first thing is to get rid of the legs. Which consequently also means getting rid of the adjustable straps, which was the other hazard that could trip my son and honestly was a real concern. This gives me a bit of a cleaner climbing space and crash pad area, but I will have to figure out a new way to structurally tie it all back together, as the legs were a large part of the design. There will also be some more adjustments here, but we can talk about that later. The new placement and modifications to the wall will leave some space to the side of it here, which will be the next improvement, more climbing space. I talked about this in other videos, but I longed for more surface area and angles to climb on. While I could definitely infill my wall more, and I plan to, I still wanted to have more variety and set longer lines. What I will do in this space will probably be planned on the fly, as I will need to take some measurements and figure some angles out after the existing wall is all tied back in, so we will sort that out later on in this video. And just like my current climbing wall that was made for a different situation, I have to work within the confines that I have, and my dream climbing wall is going to be dictated by my space and considerations. So yeah, in my wildest dreams, my climbing wall is a multi-level, several thousand-foot climbing facility, but in this space, my lifestyle, and my budget, I do think I will end up with my dream climbing wall, which is starting to be pieced together right here. And now let's return to this HCTV Reno program, sponsored by nobody. So the first thing I'm going to do is level out the climbing wall. The slab that it sits on is sloped for drainage, so this crooked climbing wall needs to be adjusted. So I'm going to use these pieces of wood to find level and use those measurements to cut a long pressure-treated shim that will go under the whole climbing wall, and then mount it to these galvanized anchors that I'm using for both keeping the kicker in place and plumb, but specifically chosen to act as standoffs. You'll see what I mean. Let's just get to it. Alright, so that right there looks, yeah, pretty exact. So I'm going to get a couple of measurements along the board to make sure the slope is relatively consistent across, and then I will cut my shim off camera and get to installing it. Now you can see the shim all cut and mocked into place to get everything level, and if we look in here, and it's looking pretty dang level now. The other thing I did was 3D print a couple of plastic standoffs or risers or whatever you want to call them to aid along with the brackets to ensure the wood is supported and elevated off the slab between each anchor to avoid moisture, as well as to allow drying when it inevitably does get wet. And yes, I got a 3D printer because, well, of course I did, and wink wink, nudge nudge, I may or may not, but probably may, make some climbing related content with that in the future. So here is your not so subtle hint to subscribe and follow along if you want to see those videos. Okay, back to this leveling business. The next step is to mount the shim along the bottom of the wall and also anchor the brackets into the concrete. The problem is that the wall currently sits on the ground, so I have to lift the whole thing up, glue and screw my shim into place with those standoffs, screw in all those anchors, which I have pre-drilled off camera, and then adjust the wall and lower it all back down into place. I'm doing all this to keep the wall intact to save time, but it might be more effort than it's actually worth. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Okay, so now I'm just adding some bracing for a few reasons. The first is to stop the kicker from racking or skewing. I will explain in a second, but mainly is to give me a place to lift the wall from, as I need unrestricted access to the bottom of the base plate and cannot lift directly from there. You'll see what I mean. Now I'm removing the kicker face, which I keep calling a kick plate, which kind of makes sense to me, but you tell me what you think. Anyway, it will get in the way of the brackets, and I need to add some extra lumber to the uprights as well, but it's providing the shear strength here, hence part of the reason I mentioned adding some temporary bracing. I want to keep everything square. Barley has also decided to help me with some moral support here and throughout the process, so she will be making lots of cameos. Her wild puppy side has greatly subsided, and she is a bit more of a chill companion. This is also the time of year where it starts getting dark at like 4 p.m., so my daylight is fleeting most days, and it often seems like I'm working until the dead of night, but I'm not. Mainly for the sake of my freezing digits and my neighbors' rights to reasonably enjoy their evenings. I tackled the last few additional supports in preparation for lifting as dusk finally caught me. Alright, so if it wasn't obvious, I lost daylight and the seasons have now changed in 24 hours. I'm now in a snowstorm, so I'm going to try to press on before I get buried in snow, and it gets even colder this season. I want something to use in the spring, so I don't really have much more time to play around with this. The next steps are to try to jack up the wall. I'm going to do that with bottleneck jacks, and I'm using ratchet straps as well as some of the existing structure like the legs to keep it balanced and also have a redundant kind of safety precaution, as well as a means to lower it if for some reason the jacks don't work the way I want them to. I will also be blocking the bottom of the wall, so I have another set of safety precautions to keep anything from going awry. But maybe this is a good time to flag that this is not a how-to video, this is more of a how I did it video, and it would take some pretty specific circumstances for you to do what I'm doing, so I don't even think you would. But yeah, maybe you shouldn't, and you can just follow along with me safely on the other end of this camera, and hopefully it all goes well and there's no fireworks. Let's get to it. And spoiler alert, there were no fireworks, especially with all the safety I incorporated. Plus, as I mentioned before, the wall is heavy, but not as heavy as you think. I have lifted up the legs by hand in previous videos, and just like a table, when you lift one quadrant, or in this case half, the weight is just redistributed around. So I was able to do this with relative ease. I should also mention that if I had another set of jacks, I think it would have been better to jack up the wall on its outside edges, but I was just working with what I had. So with the wall up to a height I could work with, I cut some supports and blocked underneath the wall to keep it all balanced as I worked on it. And here comes more snow just in time for glue up. Great. right, so I got it up without issue. But yeah, I have glued it all together, put the shim in there, and now I'm going to screw in the little standoffs, the 3D printed pieces I made, and I'm going to use those screws also to further drive and wedge those pieces together so they glue properly. So we're going to get to that, and then I can actually mount the brackets and hopefully lower the wall back down. Let's get to it. For this confined space work, I use this right-angled impact driver attachment that is kind of like the screw version of a palm nailer. It has come in handy in many tight scenarios over the years, including this one, although, yeah, it was still kind of clunky and a headache, for sure. Temporarily scabbed on some lumber against the hinge to disable it, so I can remove part of the right angle braces that keep the wall from folding in on itself. I have to do this because these pieces will get in the way of the brackets when trying to lower the wall back down, and with the way it's tied into the new structure, they technically won't really be needed anymore. And now it's time to see if this was all successful, as I tried to lower the wall back down against the backdrop of the setting sun. How poetic. Alright, so it's another cold day out here, and you might be able to tell I myself am also getting a cold, and I only have a few hours out here before I fully lose the sunlight again today. So I'm going to try to pull off all the old supports to tie in new supports that connect to the new structure, and then hopefully I can start to figure out the other section, which is a bit of a mystery right now, and I'm excited to actually kind of design and figure out what we're going to do there. So let's just get to it. Not much to say here, just a quick note that I sandwiched in an extra board here for a secret reason that I might hint at later on in this video. Ooh, mysterious. Then I screwed in some brackets and added in some PVC spacers to compensate for the thickness of the brackets and the screws. So alas, I could basically just return the wall to the state it was before I did all this work with the kicker reinstalled. Alright, so I've got my kicker back installed, and basically I want to now tie this structure up to the roof there, so I don't need these legs anymore and I can take out all these supports. Now I'm just going to check the actual angle here to make sure it's what I want it to be. It should be about 45 degrees. So if it is, then I'm going to go ahead and tack in this kind of whole structure temporarily to the roof, and essentially just flip these legs and the carriage bolts to run upwards, so then it ties into that structure. And I'll go through after and kind of tie the rest of it together better than that. But for now, I just need to kind of get everything in place. So let's check the angle. I'm not sure how well you guys can see that or not, but it's hovering around 45.3, 45.2. It's basically where I want it to be, which is perfect. So I can go ahead now and kind of just temporarily tie this in up top, and then I'm going to have to adjust the other leg to make sure that it's all square and level as well, because it's sitting on a leg on the slab which slopes that way. So I basically need to do the same thing up top, which is just kind of level everything out and make sure that that 45-degree angle translates the same on the other side. So we're going to get to that right now. And again, daylight savings gets the best of me. All right, I think today's the day that I finally remove these legs. They've treated me well and been around for 6 years, but I think it's time for them to go. I got my bone saw here. Let's do a little leg surgery. All right, and just like that, the adjustable climbing wall is no more. Kind of sad. Maybe it's just me, but it was a bit of a time capsule for an interesting time and provided a lot of fun and training from someone who doesn't like to train. So yeah, it's a little bit sad to see it go, but we're kind of on to bigger and better things. And I should also mention that it's a bit of a lie to say it's not an adjustable climbing wall anymore, because I did leave the hinge in it and I tried to keep it assembled for a reason. I do hope to make it adjustable again in the future, so wink wink, nudge nudge, like and subscribe if you want to see that. But now we're on to the other section, which is kind of new and exciting. So I got to plan and design that and figure it all out. I have a bit of an idea, but I want to sit with it a bit and make sure I'm actually doing what I want it to do. So yeah, let's just see what I'm thinking. Okay, so there are a few considerations for the space. I want something that will be less steep than the other wall. Reason 1, so I can use some of my less positive holds. Reason 2, so that Laura has something to climb on that's a bit more fun and not just a training tool. Reason number 3, so my son can have something to climb on. And this is really the most important and something I haven't really talked about until now. I want it to be something that he can grow into as a transition to more steep climbing. I also want to maximize the space here while not connecting it to the shed. They will remain as separate structures. Lastly, I have to consider the 6x6 member in this space, as it will intersect with whatever I'm building as I'm trying to maximize this area. So I landed on this iteration, with the kicker lining up with the other, then a 20-degree overhang, which can be challenging, but more than just steep, burly climbing. It splits the difference between a slab and the 45-degree angle wall beside it. I hope that this will allow me to set problems that extend and traverse into the steep section, especially with future modifications I want to make to that wall, and yes, including making it adjustable once more. I also have the option of setting on the very steep rafters at the top if I want to extend the climbing surface. Now enough yapping, let's get to building it. I won't over-describe what I'm doing here, it's more or less the same as the other section. Brackets, 3D printed standoffs and all, just without having to lift or shim anything, instead working with the sloped slab into the 2x6 frame that I will build the climbing surface off of. Similarly to how I was reusing parts of the old legs to attach the other wall to the structure, rest assured that I continued to use this lumber in this section as well. The frugal, environmentally conscious, and sentimental side of me was happy to include the old soul of this wall in its new bones. As I prep the climbing surfaces off camera, it might be a good time to mention how I got the contour of the kicker to match the shed. Using dollar store duct tape, a used paint stick, and a popsicle stick, I managed to create this advanced contour scribe to match the cladding and keep the climbing surface as close as possible while keeping both structures completely separate. And now finally, some nondescript footage of paneling being screwed on to not ruin the big reveal. After all the planning, the hype, the teasing, I think it's finally time for the grand reveal. So, drum roll please. It's the slab wall. Alright, so hopefully you're not too shocked to find that I essentially just built a 2x6 stick framed wall behind me. I mean, this section was for my son, and he is just a toddler, and while he's super psyched on climbing, which I swear I've tried not to push him on, his stoke greatly outweighs his climbing ability, and this section of garden structure is less than 8 feet tall, so should he ever climb to the top, I'll feel a lot better about it. Also, this angle, or lack thereof, means that I can set different shape holds, different size holds, different orientations, and it can be accessible to him so he can have fun on and learn within his ability. I hope it doesn't seem like a bait and switch. In fact, I'd argue that it actually isn't, because if you watched the kicker video, you might have noticed an odd bit of blocking, and that's because I actually built a little cradle to help run 2x6s up to the roof at a 20-degree angle. Yes, I still plan on doing that, and that might explain the patchwork of panel behind me, because they're kind of just sacrificial and they're just temporary until my son is able to climb an overhang and can do so, and I will be tearing out this slab. And no offense to slab climbers, in fact I think slab is sexy or rad or however you want to frame it, but it's not the best use for a home climbing wall, especially if I want to set something technical for myself. So it's going to have to eventually go, and you better believe that I'll be making another video about that change, as well as other evolutions to this wall that I've already teased out, and actually a bunch that I haven't. So let's just consider this chapter 1 of building my dream home climbing wall, and I should correct myself, it's actually our home climbing wall, because it's not just about me anymore at this point. I think the next video that I actually film on this wall will be me setting a problem for myself and some for my son, and hopefully us sessioning and climbing on it together. And I'm excited about doing that because I actually haven't climbed in months yet again, and that might explain my hyper focus trying to get this done in the freezing cold, but we'll save that story for another video. I think I've already teased out enough future content, so hopefully we'll see you in one of those in the near future. All right, take it easy and peace out. Oh, and I think it's time that I throw out this tarp. It's been recycle, reduced, reused to shreds, so